Are going on with the Canadians.
Yeah.
Can there be an agreement with Canada that does not include them compromising on their dairy policy?
Well, I don't know how it can be. The president's been pretty firm on this, as you've noted. He's talked about the 250 to 300% tariffs there. We're not asking Canada to do away totally with their supply management system, but if they're going to continue it, we want them to manage the supply. And that's essentially what happened when they started dumping this Class 7 milk on the international market to depress prices internationally. That helps our farmers and our dairymen, and it put a lot of pressure on there and a lot of stress price-wise across the country overall. So I'm hopeful from the news earlier this morning and from talking with Ambassador Lighthizer yesterday that we're going to get a good agreement for agriculture with Canada.
Do you already have an idea of how a second tranche of support might be offered, or is that simply an evaluation now?
It is an evaluation later. I mean, just like everyone has said, we want trade, not aid. If we're able to resolve all these trade disputes right away, then prior to harvest there, then that's the best thing that can happen. So this will be calculated on an ongoing basis.
Is it based more on trade optimism or on final crop size?
Well, it will be on crop size. It's going to be accurate per every individual's production, not any kind of county average or anything like that. So you'll have to prove the yields over any of the payments, but going forward, it's based on what is the trade damage, tariff damage actually calculated. That's why you see the difference between the soybean award and the corn award, because of the tariff damage. We had to calculate this in a legal fashion where we could defend it before the WTO courts.
Could there be more money added if the bean crop would be bigger and the damage stay where it's at?
Well, certainly, if you notice, the president committed up to $12 billion. This first tranche is probably going to be calculatably less than $5 billion. So we're not saying that it's half of it. We're saying it's to be determined based on what the ongoing tariff damage is.
What do you tell corn growers about the penny per bushel?
Yeah. The question was, what do we tell corn growers? We tell them exactly what I just answered. The question is that we had to calculate this based on the actual tariff disruption damage to the crop. Sadly, China has not been importing much of our corn, as we believe they should be. Those are the non-trade tariff, non-tariff barriers that we talk about in keeping out our technological high-tech corn there. And therefore, the damages they've had from tariff retribution has been minimal. And that's what the calculation came out. From my purposes, I'd love for it to have been more even, but that's the numbers are the numbers. This is a proven methodology of calculating this type of thing that you have to defend in court, and that's what we had to go with.
Secretary?
What do you think about the resolution about
Can you answer that way?
Well, we're very excited and pleased with the agreement. We're happy that it came about. We hope that it will lead to a totally renewed NAFTA between the three countries if Canada comes along. We think, again, Mexico got many things. Again, a renewed promise over zero tariffs going forward is important for both Mexico and Canada. We know that the Mexican market is important for U.S. producers, but certainly the U.S. has been very important for Mexican producers. That's the essence of trade, and we're very happy about that.
How frustrated are you with the EPA and the WOTUS revival?
Well, again, this was a legal thing. As you know, the courts threw out Administrator Pruitt's initial thing. I met with the new administrator the other day, and Administrator Wheeler, and I think he's taken a very reasonable, legally sustainable approach. I think at the end of the day, farmers will be very happy with the outcome that will be able to be affirmed in court.
So we've watched a number, obviously the Mexican thing is obviously a step in the right direction, but in terms of a deal with China, how close are we from perhaps having progress there, and how important would you like to see that progress being made? If you don't mind just speaking that way, I know it's very strange, my camera is there.
Okay, all right. Well, to answer your question, we would love to have the China deal done very quickly. Unfortunately, that's up to China. We felt like they unfairly retaliated against our efforts there. They've been, again, barring our crops, such as corn and others, DGGs for years over non-scientific methods, and so the president has called their hand on it, even their theft of intellectual property. So we're very hopeful our friends to the north, our Canadian friends, will come along very quickly to restore a renewed NAFTA, and then we believe we can have some progress with the EU as well as Japan. And then I'm hoping that China sees the light of day, that they need the United States producer and will need it to feed their growing population.
We have time for 2 more questions.
WOTUS has resurfaced. A lot of ag groups aren't happy about that. What's your thoughts on seeing WOTUS re-implemented?
Well, it was just the answer I gave a minute ago regarding WOTUS. The courts actually threw out the earlier regulatory renewal that Senator Pruitt and our Administrator Pruitt did, that farmers were really happy with. But Administrator Wheeler now is working on a renewed WOTUS rule that will be affirmed in the courts and legally sustainable to give our farmers certainty about theirs. We are not going to see mud puddles out here deemed to be waters of the U.S. I can assure you of that.
E15 year round?
Yes, the president called me this morning and said let's get it done. He wants to get that done, so hopefully we can, he'll have an announcement hopefully sooner rather than later. I know it's in his heart. We just got to balance it out and talk with our corn constituency, our corn growers and our ethanol community about what is the balance with the refineries. He needs to have something that he can demonstrate to them as well.
Do you think Wheeler and EPA are on board with this?
Yes, absolutely. Administrator Wheeler will be on board, and he knows the concerns of agriculture regarding the challenges that the old Obama WOTUS rule would have provided for agriculture, and the challenges of just farming and plowing. So Wheeler understands that. I met with him this last week. We talked about that, and his goal is to get something that can be affirmed and sustained legally in the court system. None of these rules do us any good if we can't support it from a legal perspective.
15, not WOTUS.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.